Happy Home. I feel a little bit guilty about sharing this recipe with you because I feel like this is such a decadent treat. I can hardly resist it, and I'm trying to lose weight, and I feel like I'm contributing to the delinquency of my fellow passengers on Earth. But I can't help it. I'm going to do it. My niece has COVID-19, and so I'm going to make a batch of her favorite candy to share with her. So that's my excuse. We're going to start by spraying this pan. We're making caramels, yes. And we're going to doll them up with all kinds of added extra yummies. These are toasted whole almonds. So I've sprayed this pan with nonstick spray. And I'm going to put the almonds in the bottom of the pan so that they're pretty much distributed evenly across the bottom. To this heavy bottomed pan, I'm going to clip my candy thermometer on here. My target temperature is going to be 238 degrees. I'm going to add 4 cups of white sugar and 2 cups of white corn syrup. The one thing about candy making is that it is quite a precise effort. You need to be careful to follow the recipe and measure carefully. Candy can be a little trickier than some other recipes. Most baked goods will forgive you a little bit of leeway in the way that you measure the recipe. Candy, you have to be a little bit more careful if you want it to work. Here are 2 sticks, in other words 1 cup of real butter. Don't try to use margarine, it's not going to turn out as well. And margarine has a lot more water in it, and so it's going to cause the mixture to act differently. So now we have all of this low-calorie concoction going in this pot, and I'm going to move it to the stove, and I'll show you how to do that part next. Okay, I'm going to turn this on to medium-high heat and then stir it until it comes to a full bubbling boil. That's going to take probably 6 minutes, I'd guess, to get this sugar all dissolved, but I'm not going to stop stirring it at all. I've clipped my candy thermometer in a position where I can see the red line going up. This is the cheap kind of a candy thermometer, but it works just fine. But you do have to be sure that you can actually see it once you've got a hot, bubbly mixture going. You don't want to have to move it at that point. So at first this is going to be really globby and super sticky, but it'll loosen up when the butter melts and the corn syrup melts. That'll melt the sugar. And you don't want to start adding the milk until it's fully bubbling. So I will show you how this progresses. See, the butter's melting. It's starting to loosen up. It's a long way from being ready to add the milk though. Okay, now it's been about 4 minutes. You can see that it is completely liquid, so I'm just showing you the progress of this mixture. Okay, this is exactly how you want it, and then the thermometer is reading 232 right now, but this milk is going to cool it off, and you're going to hear it sizzle a little bit. But you want to add the milk. You're going to add 2 cans of evaporated milk, and you want to add it so gradually that it doesn't stop the boiling of the mixture. So you're just going to add a tiny bit at a time. And then the mixture will respond by bubbling right up, but as soon as it's fully bubbling again, add a little more. Keep stirring it until it gets up to that temperature. You can see it's starting to turn golden already. I want to finish getting that milk in there. The milk is keeping it from getting quite that hot. It's about 6 degrees lower. There's the last of the milk. So now that temperature can just keep on going up. On this thermometer, the 238 mark is noted as soft ball, and that's exactly what you want. You want a chewy but not brittle mixture. Now notice how much it's bubbling up, and that's why you start with a great big pot, because it is going to bubble way up. And it can cook over if your pot is a little bit too small. So this is a good sized Dutch oven type pan. Now I expect it to take, from this stage, I expect to take about 5 or 6 minutes, but I'm going to watch the thermometer really carefully because I don't want to overcook it. If you overcook it, it's going to be really hard and chewy and pull out all the fillings in your teeth. And if it's too soft, then it isn't going to wrap well and it'll just be way too sticky. So you got to keep a really close eye on it. Right now the thermometer is registering about 228. Just still stirring. At this point it rises, the temperature rises very gradually. Okay, we're about 2 degrees from the target. So you gotta be really careful not to let it stick. Just 1 notch below. It's the right color. And it's just a shade below the temperature. Alright, there we go. I think we're there. I'm going to keep stirring. I turned off the heat. I'm going to keep stirring it until it stops bubbling. Or almost stops bubbling, because it can still burn. There's a lot of residual heat in the bottom of the pan. If you are using an electric stove, you'll want to take it off the heat, but on a gas stove, obviously you can turn the heat off instantly. So I'm going to drop some of this into this ice water and see how it acts. You see it? I could see that it kind of formed some little snaky threads. Give that another quick stir. But as you can see, I can form this into a soft ball. That's going to tell me what the texture of this caramel is going to be, or more or less. It's been dipped in water, so it's not completely honest about what it's going to be like. This one that was in the water a little longer is a little stiffer, and I think that's the stiffer one is going to be just right. So I can verify it tastes good too. 1 more quick stir, then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla as promised. This is my favorite La Vencedora Mexican vanilla that I order off of eBay by the 1 liter bottle. That's the equivalent of very close to a quart. Costs about $15 a liter, a quart. Actually, it says 940 milliliters is the precise measurement. Stir that vanilla in real well, and we'll get ready to pour it over the nuts that are waiting in that pan. Okay, here we go. I'm going to use this silicone spatula to get the last of that candy out of the pan. When I was in college, I was cooking in the kitchen one day, and I had a roommate whose mother was from France. She was French, obviously. And I said something about, I asked my roommate to hand me a spatula, and she said, "What's a spatula?" And I said, "A spatula, you know, like what you flip pancakes with." And she said, "You call that a spatula? I always thought it was called a spatula." And it turns out that her mother, who was a native French speaker, had never realized that it was pronounced spatula instead of spatula. So it's a very rare thing that I use one of these without thinking of it as a spatula with a little chuckle at the end. So that is going to set up now. So it is perfectly fine to just wait and set up by itself, but I don't think it will be damaged by sprinkling part of it anyway with some semi-sweet chocolate chips. I'm just going to take a couple of handfuls. I think I'll only do half. So we'll have some that are chocolatey and some that are not. But we will have 100% delectability. So I'm going to let these melt, which will take only about a minute. And then I'll spread them out to make a thin layer on top of the caramels using my spatula. These chocolate chips have all melted. And now I'm just going to very gently tease them into one solid sheet of chocolate. I should say this recipe yields, without the chocolate chips, yields about 5 pounds of caramels. I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of sea salt over part of this because the little bit of saltiness really brings out the full flavor of the caramel, but I think I'll just do it on the part that doesn't have the chocolate. I should have probably done it under the chocolate if I wanted that added element. So I did the sea salt on this side. This side will just be the chocolate caramels. All right, I put this in the refrigerator so it's cold and it feels it's still a little bit soft to the touch where I can make a dent in it. That's perfect because it's going to have the perfect consistency. I'm going to cut it with my pizza cutter. This is the smallest one I have. It reaches into the corners a little bit better, and then I'll get into the very corner with a pair of scissors. So I'm going to cut it into little pieces. It takes a little bit of elbow grease to get this done, that are about 1 inch wide. So I'm going to cut it into 1-inch squares. This is a 10 by 15 pan, so it's a little bit bigger than the 9 by 13 pan that you ordinarily would use, but it's going to make it just the right size to cut it about 1 inch wide. And of course, with homemade candy, it's not going to be precisely the same. They're not all going to be exactly the same size. First one's always going to be a little bit mutilated. That's the one you have to eat. So there's a delectable little candy. See the almonds on the bottom, caramel on the top. I'll start working on this one while I wrap this one. That is the best caramel. It's so delicious. Wonderful. Okay. But this is what I started with. And you can see, actually a butter knife fits in there in that corner just fine. Don't need to use my scissors. You get them all sticky. So to wrap them, you put it in the middle of a square of paper, either parchment paper or wax paper. You fold the corners in and over, and then you twist them like that and like that. Ready to go. This is going to yield over 100 of these. So it takes a long time to wrap them, but watch a basketball game while you're wrapping them, and they'll be done in no time. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the caramels.